Hey there, welcome to Block Pixel Artistry, and welcome to another episode of Radio Artistry. So King B-Dogs recently tweeted out asking about the 5-minute despawn game mechanic, and basically he was asking if it was a unfair mechanic or something that made for interesting gameplay, that run to get back to your items before they despawn. And he also clarified that this tweet was only for when players dropped all of their items after being defeated, not items that were dropped by other means. But I was actually quite surprised when I read some of the comments on the Twitter post on that tweet because in a sense that it seemed like a good amount of people liked the challenge of running back to their items. I did see some comments saying that it wasn't very fun to try to get back to their items to end up finding that they just despawned anyway. So there was a good mix of people that either liked the 5-minute despawn rule or disliked it. I'm also under the impression that the reason the despawn in 5 minutes or the rule I'm also under the impression that the reason items despawn in 5 minutes is because it could interrupt the game's performance. So I was thinking that perhaps this could be solved for everybody with a new item, and that item is called the Skulk Latch Bundle. Now, this item is basically still a bundle, however what makes it into a Skulk Latch bundle is a concept called the Skulk Latch, which can only be found in the Skulk chests that are protected by the Warden. Now, the Skulk chests are also a concept of mine that I talked about in my previous episode of Radio Artistry, which you can watch by clicking the info card or the link in the description. I like the idea of putting the Skulk Latch in the Skulk chest as I feel it connects the two concepts together, but basically this is just an item that you could find only in the Deep Dark biome. I'd also like to mention that the machinery that's covered in Skulk in this video has nothing to do with this concept. It's just for fun visual purposes while I talk, and that's something that I might do for an episode of Radio Artistry every now and then, just for fun. Okay, so what would this Skulk Latch item do? Well, I was thinking that when you combine this item with the bundle, this could become the very first undespawnable item when dropped. I'd also like to say that you may be wondering, well, what about the unstackable items that you drop that can't fit in the bundle? And I have a concept for that too, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So why would this Skulk Latch bundle be undespawnable? Well, think about this. Because the Warden has been clarified to be undefeatable in its design by King B-Dogs, and the Warden is actually made out of Skulk as well. Perhaps the Skulk Latch bundle could also reflect the same toughness as the Warden because they're both made of Skulk. I'd also like to say that when I placed lava on a Skulk sensor when they were in the snapshots, well, none of the Skulk sensors caught on fire, and basically this made me think that Skulk could possibly be fire resistant. So perhaps the Skulk Latch bundle could also be fire resistant when dropped in lava, and even float, because it's covered in Skulk, and it floating would make it easier for you to know where it is. Now, I was also thinking about a reason why it doesn't despawn in comparison to other items, and the story that I'm going with is that Skulk itself seems to have the ability to overgrow other blocks, and it also seems to be something that has been around for a long time that is a tough material, as is the Warden. A type of material that survived in the Deep Dark for a long time. This could be the reason that the Skulk Latch bundle wouldn't despawn, as the Skulk Latch itself is part of the bundle and the Skulk also wants to survive to protect your items. But I think it also has a lot of potential over the other items because it seems to me that the bundle is basically just one item that holds 64 other items. Therefore, I'm under the impression that this is much easier for the game engine to handle when it's dropped, because instead of 64 items on the ground, there's only one. But that's just my impression. I don't know too much about game coding, or really anything, I guess. And the fact that the Skulk Latch bundle is a very rare type of loot that's guarded by the Warden and each player can decide if they want to utilize the Skulk Latch bundle or not, I feel like this makes it a keep inventory type of item that must be earned by the players that want to use the Skulk Latch bundle, but for the players that like the challenge of running back to their items, they can completely ignore this item. So I feel this is a win-win for both of these players. And to me it's almost like the lightning rod. A player can decide to use it or not, but it's still there. Even in the future, I'm sure that I'll give the Skulk Latch even more uses as I like to give my concepts more than just one. Now, I also mentioned that I had a concept for the unstackable items in your inventory that can't fit into the bundle. I was also thinking that because the Skulk is alive, just like the Skulk Latch is alive, well, what if when the player is defeated and they drop all their items, as well as the Skulk Latch bundle, well, what if when the Skulk Latch bundle is dropped, it'll crawl or scoot its way towards your other dropped items that are in a 10 by 10 radius of where the Skulk Latch bundle was originally dropped. And because the Skulk Latch bundle is covered in Skulk, and Skulk almost seems like a material that could be stretchy, when a player is defeated, the Skulk Latch bundle would stretch to gain 8 extra inventory slots to pick up nearby items. I also feel like this makes sense as the Skulk Latch could even crawl over to the items almost like it feels the vibrations of the floating items near it. But it could also stretch to pick up one unstackable item, taking up one of the 8 extra inventory slots. It seems to me that the player will probably be walking around with multiple bundles already, and if they happen to all be Skulk Latch bundles, you could potentially save a lot of your unstackable items like tools and armor. Now, in theory, you could save a lot of your unstackable items by carrying around a lot of Skulk Latch bundles, but this isn't meant to be extremely overpowered, so for the typical use of this item, it may not save every unstackable item, but it'll save a lot more of your items in comparison to not having it. This is meant to be my take on a in-game keep inventory type item that protects your dropped items, and it certainly guarantees these to protect the items that are already in the Skulk Latch bundle. But I think that this would be the step in the right direction for this type of item, as I feel it's pretty balanced as it is, and the ability to pick up at least one unstackable item is pretty generous for the bundle. You also have to remember that the Skulk Latch item wouldn't be an easy item to get either. It would be quite rare and have to be earned. Also, the Skulk Latch stretching mechanic isn't something that it typically does unless its player is defeated. So once it's grabbed any items in a 10x10 block radius around itself, it'll just sit there until you return to pick it back up. And once you do so, you'll have about 20 seconds before the Skulk Latch bundle drops all of the 8 extra items that it picked up for you. So you wouldn't be able to just keep these 8 extra inventory slots. They disappear once you pick the bundle back up. You may also wonder why it is that the Skulk Latch has been tamed or become friends with the player, considering the fact that it is Skulk. But think about it, the players are already encouraged to use Skulk sensors in their redstone projects, and I'm sure the other Skulk blocks that come into the Deep Dark will also be something that the player can utilize to their benefit. So I really think that the Skulk Latch bundle makes sense. I also like the possibility that a player could tame and become friends with Skulk type items, but I don't see this idea applying at all to the Warden. I was also thinking that because the Skulk Latch is also holding the bundle closed, it could also be a type of lock that could be opened by placing the Amethyst Bell next to it in the inventory UI. Now, the Amethyst Bell is another concept from my previous episode of Radio Artistry, and while the idea of the Amethyst Bell could use a bit more designing, I still like the idea of a noise/vibration key that the Skulk would respond to. So this has been another episode of Radio Artistry. I also want to say thank you for all the support on the first episode of Radio Artistry, as well as all the wonderful support on this channel in general. So thanks for listening, and I hope you have a good one.